All right, first article comes our way this week from the Journal of Accountancy, and the AI CPA Council just supports the advancement of a new CPA licensure model. So actually, I'm going to share my screen really quick, show you guys a quick shot of this. So this is this is basically what they voted on. So none of the finalization has been made as to the changes to the test, but this is kind of their idea of going forward. So the CPA license will basically, you'll have a core of accounting, audit, tax, and what they're calling tech. But this probably is super amalgamous to what there is the 4 parts of the CPA exam now. And now they're saying you need a core competency in this and then some kind of advanced knowledge in one of these 3 areas. And so basically the reasoning behind it is they think those 3 areas are the future of the CPA like profession. So not only will you have to have a core in accounting, audit, tax, and tech, the 4 core pieces, but you'll need to show advanced knowledge in one of these 3 areas. So tax compliance and planning, business reporting and analysis, and information systems and controls. So I don't know. I thought this was pretty interesting. I was kind of trying to see if they had missed an area here. And I think it probably is I guess it looks like one of those Simon repeats games, but I think the outside ring is probably encompassing enough of what we think the future is going to be. But I'm just wondering from your guys' perspective if they've missed something.
Well, I thought it was interesting that they didn't actually have audit or assurance services on the outside ring. I mean, they still include audit in the core thing, but it's kind of. I've always found it interesting that accountants have this like dual identity of what they really do versus what they want to think of themselves as. And I throw myself in that category as well. And then when I see this, it kind of reminds me that, it's not just me. It's like our whole profession has this kind of issue of what we actually do versus what we see ourselves doing in the future, or versus what we want to be seen as. Because I mean, the reality of all those core competencies to me is that when you look at those core competencies on the outside ring, those aren't actually not things that the CPA license has unique monopoly on. The only thing that the CPA license actually has a unique monopoly on is what we call assurance services, right? You have to be a CPA to do audits. You have to be a CPA to do compilations and reviews and those what they call assurance services. That's the piece that's regulated by states that requires a CPA license. The other piece is having knowledge or expertise in information and control systems doesn't require a CPA license. There's other consultants who also do that. Being a specialist in tax compliance and tax matters, there's other professions, including lawyers and enrolled agents and other professional credentials that can do that. And what was the other one? Oh, business processes and management information or something like that.
It's business reporting and analysis.
Business reporting and analysis. So again, that's from a management perspective, that's usually an unlicensed. That is what a lot of accountants who don't have licenses per se, that's what they do or what they end up in. So being a CPA, I certainly promote the idea that CPAs have good qualifications in those areas, or potentially if they're specialized in those areas, they may be among the best professionals to do those things. But my only point is those aren't things that they are uniquely qualified to do. They're not the only ones qualified to do it. Our license as CPAs doesn't give us a monopoly over that the way it does over assurance services. So it's an interesting juxtaposition that the one thing that our license actually gives us a monopoly over is not front and center in that model.
I also might say that I think they might have missed, CPA, certified public accountant. I don't necessarily know that, to your point there, of the outside ring, the only thing that you're actually required to have a CPA license to perform the audit function would be the one thing that I would think they would kind of enhance, because it's kind of built into the fact that you need a public accounting firm with CPAs to be able to perform an audit for them. Either you have the SEC side where you're auditing public companies, or you're on the other side where you're auditing smaller companies that are not listed or nonprofits per se that require it due usually to bank loans or to charters or to grantors in the case of nonprofits. So I thought it was interesting. And I guess maybe in my mind, I think they might be having an identity crisis almost, where they, like Ty's saying, where you want to be something that you're quite not yet. So, and to Ty's point, the business reporting and analysis, they have the certified managerial accountant test that kind of like, emphasizes that portion of the model. If you're talking information systems and controls, so much of that is going to be in IT, and they have specialty like auditors or whatever you want to call it that don't require a license. That's like an IT audit or a process audit that it's often called, that most of the time performed by a CPA. But then the tax compliance and planning, like Ty said, lawyers can do it, enrolled agents. So it's, I guess, I don't know. It's a tough question, I think, to ask. And I think
it's a little bit different, and I think it seems a little bit strange, but the only thing I do like about it is that I do think that the things that they've chosen to be kind of on the spokes are so different that I can totally imagine a person who has a really strong skill set in one of those three and not so much in the other, or in the other two. And so, I think everything that you guys are saying is totally right, but I just think that there's so many different branches that somebody can take an accounting career. And so it's like, it seems to be good that the CPA exam is acknowledging that there's different areas of expertise that an accountant can go into, and then trying to cater the licensure to fit that, But it does seem a little bit strange that audit isn't one of them.
Yeah, I think if anybody in the world is to hold up the importance of an independent audit, it should be the CPA profession, the CPA bodies, the institutions. And so I would say the cynical side of me says that, it's a little bit disheartening that they don't place that more front and center, because, like I said, I mean, nobody else in the world is really going to promote the importance of an independent audit and independent auditors in the financial system more than the CPA profession itself. So when we, I just think that they shouldn't necessarily give up that ground, and that's coming from somebody who is actually not. I don't do audits. I don't do assurance services, so I don't actually use my CPA license that way. But I have a healthy respect for my colleagues who do, and understand that they actually use their licenses for what they were intended for, versus somebody like me who uses the license as just this this thing that enhances my resume, right? That's how I use it. For me, my license is a resume enhancer, and for them, their license is what's intended for. And I feel like this model is designed to help me more than them. And while I, self-servingly, I might appreciate that, I feel a little bit of loss on that. I don't necessarily think that's where the professional body should be focusing, but yeah.
I also might want to mention that I think it was, 5 or 10 years ago, they were complaining that less and less people were getting CPAs because it's not, as the world moves forward, there kind of isn't that. I guess there is reference for the CPA licensure, but you don't need a CPA licensure to be a successful accountant per se. And I think more and more people are realizing that. And so in the past, they've talked about, making the CPA exam more broad or an easier kind of entry to it, I think was some discussion that they've had in the past. And I'm just wondering if given the amount of work that it takes to get through the 4 test as it stands now, if you're tacking on these outside layers as additional specific deep dive information that they're wanting people to know, if that will be even a larger barrier to people coming in. and if we'll see a drop in the amount of applicants or the amount of people passing the exam or going after it, that would kind of limit the amount of CPAs and could possibly dilute the licensure, the public's image of the licensure.
I would also wonder if one of the spokes is inherently easier or more difficult or to obtain than the other ones, because I could imagine people cherry picking it. If any one of them is sort of the weak link there, then everybody would focus on that just to get through the licensure, which right now isn't really something you can do as much without this change in place.
For sure. I think that's for sure I think that's a good call out. I mean, that's human nature. And I think we definitely will see. We'll definitely see that happen. Having taught and taught accounts in the university level for over a decade, I can definitely say for sure, if you create a path towards certification and there's kind of an easier route than others, most will try to squeeze themselves through that easier path. That's for sure the case.
That brings me to my next question. Which one do you guys think is the easiest path that someone could take?
Well, it depends on how they implement these, really. I mean, yeah, it's hard to say in the abstract, because I think, with careful implementation, you could make them all very difficult. I think the one that seems that on the front end, when you don't have a lot of experience, that would seem kind of the most difficult from a technical standpoint, would be taking a deeper dive into a technical topic like tax. But yeah, it just depends on, that you can make a deeper dive into a more generalized topic like business reporting. You could make that more difficult too, just depending on where you go with it. So I think that goes back to what AJ was saying about, is this new model going to be easier or harder, right? And I mean, I don't think there's any reason to think it'd be easier. It could be harder, but not necessarily, because they could be kind of decreasing the difficulty of what they're calling the core layer to increase the difficulty of the external layer, so that the total thing is about the same difficulty as it ever was before. So yeah, I guess it'll all be in the implementation. We'll see.
It'll be interesting to see how that goes.